10 minutes past 8 a.m. Thursday's edition of Morning at NTV does continue for more minutes. My name is Priscilla Regina Naloga into our Kickstarter this morning, where we look at the state power and the democratization process in Uganda. Now, recent reports from human rights observers have linked Uganda and to Tanzania when it comes to political repression. One is left wondering how a government that came into power trumpeting human rights and democracy is now on the front pages of reports, and with the army and police as top of human rights violators in the country. Yet, in light of all this, government recently awarded 1 billion shillings as compensation to police officers injured during last year's twin bomb attacks at Parliamentary Avenue and the Central Police Station, to the detriment of the grieving families of those who lost their loved ones in the 2020 November riots. Now, government's repressive tendencies date back to as early as 2001. A case in point, in 2016, when civilians lost their lives at the Renzuru Palace and the king remains in custody up to date, in a scene seemingly a massacre act in many people's minds. Or we could jog your memory back to the walk-to-work protests in 2011 with Dr. Kizza Besigye and how that sparked riots in different parts of this country. So the big question this morning is, how did we end up here and what really went wrong? To decipher these questions and a lot more, I am now joined by David Rubongoya, who's the Secretary General for the National Unity Platform Party. Good morning to you, David.
A very good morning to you and a very good morning to the viewers.
All right, and I'm also joined by Emmanuel Chisembo, who is a political analyst and also CEO for Bunyoro Kitara Youth Initiative. Good to have you back, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
All right, so I'll start with David. Yesterday you held a service. It's been 1 year since we did have members of the National Unity Platform and also MPs in the 11th Parliament, Alan Sewanena and Segirinya Mohammed, being incarcerated. They've made 1 year in prison, and up to date, there's not been a trial, nothing in that regard. As the National Unity Platform, you held a service in honor of them, but also in memory of those that lost their lives in the riots of 2022 before we went into the general elections. Bring us to speed in regards to how far the journey has been in terms of redeeming the National Unity Platform MPs.
Yeah, thank you very much, and a very good morning once again to the viewers. I think every Ugandan watching us should really be worried for themselves, because unfortunately when these things happen to some people, we tend to look at them as, you know, these are politicians, these are what, but these are real things which are happening to our people. I want, of course, first of all, to send condolences to our people in Kasese who have lost lives in mudslides, and others who are going through all sorts of problems. It is true that yesterday, Honorable Alan Sewanena and Honorable Segirinya Mohammed spent 1 year, as of yesterday, they've spent 1 year under illegal detention. And I call it illegal detention because the 1995 Constitution, which we still operate under and which has been, of course, adulterated so many times and messed up, still provides for the right to a fair hearing, but also a speedy trial. When I was studying political science many years ago, political education many years ago before it was banned in secondary schools, we were told that the first reason of the 18, which Amin advanced to get rid of the Obote regime, was unlawful detention without trial. But look at us, very many years later, we have members of parliament in detention without trial. We have been saying to the regime that if they have any charge against these our members of parliament, let the evidence be brought out and let them be tried. About 2 weeks ago, maybe actually about a month ago, when they appeared before court, some of the accused persons testified before court that they had been tortured, harassed, and forced to testify against Honorable Alan Sewanena and Honorable Segirinya. So it is a clear case of persecution. This is not prosecution, it is persecution of these members of parliament.
Okay.
So it is very unfortunate. Of course, we have exhausted all the legal avenues. We have applied for bail. You remember they were initially released on bail and immediately arrested. I don't know even if you are an NRM supporter or whatever, I don't know what you think about these actions, where the court of law releases people and they're immediately rearrested, not even rearrested, but abducted by armed thugs, putting on plain clothes, put in drones and driven off. So these are the challenges we have. And of course, we tried to apply for bail again. And General Museveni came out and warned them, said, you know, how can you give bail to murderers? How can? But the Constitution of Uganda puts in place the presumption of innocence. A person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That is why the right to apply for bail is there, and that is why judges should be able to exercise that independently without intimidation.
All right, let's talk about the independence of the judicial system in Uganda in light of this conversation. 1 year sincerely is long, and as David has alluded to it, in his perspective, they see it as persecution and not prosecution. Delayed justice is denied justice. Emmanuel.
Yeah, I would like to also send my condolences to the family of General Eli Tumuine, and of course also put it across to the NRM that of course he was not awarded or accorded the due respect because he has been in parliament for over 40 years, I think, from NRC. We didn't see him being respected, that is in parliament, even in Mbuya. I think there is a very, very big question about the fallen general, the way he was treated. To put that aside, the issue you have asked about these people, I think the 4 principles of NRM, that is about democracy, patriotism, then there is what we call social economic transformation, and what we call they are about 4, but I think it has not really practiced what it is meant to do, because even himself, not leaving my brother here, even himself, President Museveni, when he went to the bush, he went to fight for what we call democracy. And of course, when you look at principles of democracy or governance, you look at about transparency, you look at accountability, you look at equity, those kind of principles. So you find that really, as a member of parliament who is representing, actually, he has been lent power. He has been lent power to present the people, and right now you find that their people are not represented in parliament. And I really look at the whole issue. If it is now a member of parliament representing a constituency in Uganda, then how about me, Dr. Kisembo, who doesn't have any platform, like Honorable Sewananya and the other Sigirinya? They have a platform in a parliament, and of course the Constitution of Uganda says you are not you are supposed to taken through proceedings in a court until they prove you guilty. So they are like changing. They are like telling us that you are guilty, not until you are proven what? You are innocent. So I would like to actually task my people, like Norbert Mao, right now, who is heading that docket of institution, to really come out, because these are political prisoners, and of course they give us a direction as NRM, and of course they always try to redirect anger. Most of these people in Uganda, largely you find that the population is young, with the problems of unemployment, problems of corruption, then even poverty. So when these people are trying to redirect, they act as shock absorbers, and in the end it is us, the NRM government, who are the first beneficiary, from this opposition. So I would like to actually tell my colleague Norbert Mao, you have also been in the opposition. You know how opposition is. You have played a very big role from university.
Right now, he's in government. He has been in opposition.
So let him try to see, because these people, I am much aware that they have people who can stand for them.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You have talked about innocence, and I'll ask David something here. It's coming to 2 years since the 2020 riots, and compensation has never come through for the innocent lives that were lost in that fateful season, and yet 1 billion shillings suddenly has been compensated to the twin bombing survivors and those who lost their lives in that case. What do you make of this compensation and fairness from government?
Of course, it's a clear case of the citizens of Uganda not being respected. First of all, you call them riots, and we've called them protests. The Ugandans were protesting against what they saw as unjust treatment of their presidential candidate. They were out there protesting. But if you remember, many of the people who died were not even involved in the protests. They were killed by what the regime likes to call stray bullets. Now, General Museveni, first of all, I think said each family would be given 10 million shillings. That did not come through. Then many of them tried to even file cases which have not even been listened to. So when you talk about, when you compare the billions being paid to police officers who were injured the other day to the money which, because you see some of these people, and they've often come to our offices, they are so poor, they are destitute, people who lost their loved ones. They cannot even afford anything. They cannot afford school fees, they cannot afford whatever, because their sole breadwinner was killed, the father or the mother, whatever. And you remember some of the people who were killed were actually children and all that. So, you know, if we still have this regime which does not really respect the people of Uganda, then you cannot expect any justice to come through for these our people. And that is why our cause has been fundamentally about changing the status quo in Uganda. Because, trust me, after shooting those people, they forgot about them. And it was just another statistic. You talked about the people massacred in Kasese. Where has been just any justice for them? Nothing. You know, over 150 people killed, and the government decides to close that chapter, instead promotes Elwelu and others who participated in that massacre. So you can see that there will be no justice until the status quo changes.
How many national unity platforms are still behind bars?
It's very difficult to tell, because you know, some of them are in prisons that you don't even know about. Yesterday someone came and told me that he had been imprisoned at a prison farm somewhere, which we did not even know about. So we have a group of 32 people at Chitaria, for example, who are a specific group of people. We have the members of parliament. At Chitaria, we have others. You know, in 2020 and 2021, people were being arrested on frivolous charges. They say you've been caught putting on a military uniform, and in some cases they say inciting violence and all that. So there are very, very many people who are still in detention. Our estimates show that there are between 150 and 200 who are still in detention. Immediately after elections, we had 3,000 people that we could account for. But it turned out that that was even a smaller number, because there are very, very many others who were there. And what is interesting is that many people, for example, these people have come out of Chitalia. They have not, the regime does not care. For example, a gentleman called Wiser came out a week ago. He had spent 1 year and a half and 4 months in detention at Chitalia. He comes out, and you ask yourself, comes out to what? His family is messed up. He doesn't have a job. They don't care. They just take you, keep you away. They say they found you the red beret, and they keep you away for 1.5 years. Just imagine, just being kept away for all that time.
For a small
Think about
that.
Our members of parliament. You have a constituency to represent, Honorable Segirinya and Sewanyana. You remember how many things Honorable Segirinya was doing in his constituency, for example. He had the hospital, he had ambulances, transport services. Most of those have stalled, simply because their member of parliament is away. They are not represented.
Well, the question then becomes, what went wrong? Because this is the very same government that came into power, and one of the reasons that brought them into power is that people's human rights were being arrested by the governments prior to them coming into power, and so they came to change that. However, that doesn't seem to be the change that is being fronted as we speak today, and both of you being the reason that you are here today. When you look at the army and the police and them being top of the list of the violation entities in Uganda, it begs the question, how did we end up here? And I'll start with you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, one thing we need to know that Uganda, before this NRM government, that it came also with its own points to put across to the Ugandans. But of course that one, when you look at democracy, one of it that brought it to power, that to fight dictatorship, and of course these people have been abused. That is to say about in terms of human rights. But now you look at the whole process, I think we are going back to square one as Uganda. When you look at these people who are in the government, but I would not say maybe it is President Museveni, but these are extremists, or these are radical people who have tried to hijack that is power. They do whatever they think for their own self-gains, because I don't think that President Museveni is as bad as eliminating his opponents. He's not known for that. If he was, then Dr. Kizza Besigye wouldn't be anywhere today. We have seen Cecilia Ogwal. These are extremists. We need to investigate, because as we talk right now, you saw General Eli Tumwine would not be flown as far as USA because of some kind of question marks like ICC. So he had to go to Kenya, and he could not cross as far as that is USA. So if that is now happening in the country, who are these people behind? Are they interested in this government of ours, or they want it get out of power? Because when you look at the commanders who always give orders to shoot at people, you look at the Kasese massacre, you look at this 2020, there are so many things which have been happening. For you are talking about this recent one. But there is even walk to work from 2012, and so many people lost their lives. So we need to know, because President Museveni put in force these kind of institutions like the PSU, Police Standard Unit, to investigate. We have the military tribunal, but we have not seen these people being brought to book. We have not seen them, they have not actually been investigated. So we are asking ourselves, who is always behind these people? I will not come out and say President Museveni is behind them, because I have not seen him persecuting his enemies. But who are these people? Are they being funded by the foreign countries? Are they being funded by the neighboring countries? We need to find out clearly and know what is exactly happening. Because when you look at, we saw here the law about firearms. It is not very, very specific. The law about firearms, they tell you in Kasese, we go to know that there are some firearms. Then how about these other people who have been disarmed, like the Patrick John Amama Mbabazi here in Kololo? They picked all the weapons. We did not see killings there, and yet there were bodyguards and the others, but we did not see killings there. So why should it be to Kasese? Is it an indication that you are saying that any other cultural leader, if you are big-headed, maybe we are going to discipline you like this and this? So we don't know what exactly is happening in Uganda. Is it
because at the time people of Kasese did not vote anyone who represents the current government? It's a question that looms from what you are submitting. And also, who's behind all of this? National Unity Platform comes into existence in a multi-partisan dispensation. That was brought about by this this very same government. However, we continue to see with the current landscape, when you are on the opposite side of government, you are suppressed, you are cut off, you are limited to exactly what your duty is as opposition. When you look at things like the by-elections that have been participatory just in this year from Soroti through other by-elections, you get to see that maybe other parties are just here to participate in the processes of democracy, but not exactly take up the responsibility and leadership of democracy. So isn't this all a representation of a bona fide democracy to you, David?
Of course, Uganda has gradually been described as a hybrid regime, Uganda and Museveni. A hybrid regime is that regime which puts in place a facade of democracy. You know, they have a parliament, but parliament is, you know, suppressed. You have courts of law, but every time they want to decide something very fundamental, the regime comes in. You have elections regularly, but elections are not free and fair. So that's what is called a hybrid regime, although now we are gradually moving to complete authoritarianism. I'll tell you that I've participated in these by-elections, all of them, and it's incredible what has been happening. You know, we were in Busongola the other day, and without any shame, people come in and in a queue, and someone votes 7 times, 8 times. Electoral Commission officials are there. You call Mr. Yabakama and everyone else. No one is able to do anything. So that is the country we live in right now. Of course, you saw what happened in Soroti. You have election bundles in favor of NRM placed in there, and the Electoral Commission just counts and says we have had a peaceful election. You heard what happened in Omoro, where they arrested more than 62 of our polling agents, and you know, somehow they say this has been a peaceful election. So that is the crisis we have in Uganda, that you don't have a democratic institution. And my brother here is saying that, you know, you cannot blame General Museveni for what is happening, which I completely disagree with. He pretends over this country. When people were killed here in Kampala, he came out and praised the security forces for a job well done. He did not come out to say there was going to be justice for these crimes against humanity. He came out and praised them. So, and he's a commander-in-chief as far as the law is concerned. So, if someone can go and massacre people in Kasese, and then you elevate that person, he's now the deputy chief of defense forces of the country, and all the others who participated have since been promoted one way or the other, then how can you not blame him for what is going on? He definitely knows what is going on. Right now, as I speak, there's a young lady called Tracy, who we don't know where she is. She was taken away about 12 days ago. Now, we've been looking for her everywhere without success. Jakana Naduli was picked up on Monday in a drone. Up to now, nobody knows where he is. And many others who continue to be abducted and who continue to be disappeared. These are forced disappearances are unconstitutional. They are illegal. The law provides that if you arrest someone, that person must be produced before courts of law within 48 hours. But these armed gangs now just pick people, take them away, torture them, subject them to all manner of criminal actions. You know, you've seen ladies come out and say they were raped, they were assaulted in detention. So this is the country we are living in right now. So it is very, very unfortunate, of course, that a regime which came in, like you asked the question, promising to, you know, promote human rights, to end militarism and that kind of thing. So that is where we are right now. How did we get here? We got here simply because the regime decided to be in power forever. That is just the only thing. Longevity in power causes all these problems. The moment a regime or General Museveni decides that I'm going to be in power for life, that is the cause of all these things. Now you have to kill, to torture, to abduct people in order to keep in power. So all these things are done as a form of intimidation, as a weapon to threaten people, to intimidate them, and to keep them subjugated.
What would be a consideration of a peaceful transition of power, according to you?
Democracy, democratic elections, simple and clear. You see, the Article 1 of our Constitution provides for regular, free and fair elections. If you have democratic elections, then the elections are able to ensure that you have a government which is accountable to the people and which the people know that they have actually selected for themselves. And the people must also have an opportunity to remove a government which they feel no longer represents their interests.
All right.
Unfortunately, in Uganda, you have a regime which says that we must be in power because we fought, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Political repression in Uganda. Let's draw away from it and maybe pick up some lessons from our neighbors, Kenya, that have recently exercised democracy in terms of a free and fair election, to the extent that even the Supreme Court acted independent of all other stakeholders and parties involved in the electoral process to then award William Ruto as president-elect of Kenya right now. What lessons do you pick out of their version of democracy versus ours?
Yeah, one of the lessons we can pick from our neighbors, which may not be here in Uganda, as my brother is saying, democracy is the only way to go. But we need to look at our institutions. Are they really independent? If you talk about the Electoral Commission, is it independent or it is under somebody's arm? Or you look at the judiciary, you look at the parliament, the executive. So that is what we have been seeing in Kenya. We have been seeing the executive does not interfere with the parliament, does not interfere with the independent electoral commission and boundaries. We have not seen them interfering with the police and the army. And that's why we are finding no political prisoners in Kenya. There are no political prisoners. Everyone has played his own or her card well to deliver that kind of victory. Even when the chairperson of IBC, that is Chebukati, announced the results, I thought they would be contested, but all the signs were clear that he is the Constitution of Kenya allows him to do what? To announce the official results. And that's why even the court has also given its ruling that they maintained his win, his pronouncement that is about the results of Kenya. So when you look at all that, that one starts from what we call the independence of institutions, which is not in Uganda, because even if you see parliament here operating, it is under the executive. If you see police operating, the same under the executive. The army commander is under the executive. So it is very, very hard for Uganda to successfully have elections like the ones of Kenya, which are free and fair.
David, you were on ground, you were an observer throughout the Kenyan election, and you've been following these proceedings up until the Supreme Court ruling. In your observations, how have they been able to actually respect things like human rights and also the independence of entities? And as National Unity Platform in opposition, what are you bring back home lessons?
Of course, and I want to agree with him that the critical question is about institutions. In Uganda, you have one individual being an overlord over all institutions that we have in this country, as opposed to where you have institutions. And people need to know that Kenya, to reach where it has reached, has been through sacrifice. And that's why we call upon the citizens of Uganda to be willing to sacrifice for their country, because Kenya has had a tough journey. They also had their own version of a dictator, and they had a lot of repression and all that. But we've seen that these past years, the institutions of Kenya have become more independent, have become, you see, for example, how justices of the Supreme Court are selected, or even judges of all courts, through a better process, not here, where General Museveni simply wakes up and appoints whoever he wants. There's a Judicial Service Commission, but then he literally directs it on what to do. You have, the Electoral Commission. Just look at the Electoral Commission here vis-a-vis the IEBC, where Chebukati actually is able to announce a candidate who is not a favorite of the incumbent president. I was joking with my friends, if Byabakama tried to do that, he would be abducted immediately. I don't know where he would be right now if he decided to, announce someone else in an election. You saw what happened in the last election, where the security forces were going around arresting our people with DR forms. So Kenya has had its own challenges in the past, and they have tried to move up from those. It has been through a lot of sacrifice. So what we can say is that Ugandans need to be willing to sacrifice for us to be able to reach that point where institutions will be independent, where human rights will be respected, and if the human rights are violated, then you must have an opportunity in court. You know, people have been tortured, including Masereka and many others. We filed these cases some 6 months, a year ago, and up to now they've not even been heard. We filed, I don't know how many cases with the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Right from Arua days, you have an Human Rights Commission there, which should be entertaining these matters. But you file a case, and 2-3 years later, they even fear to touch that file. Okay. So what kind of country is that? What kind of country is this, indeed, is the question that David Rombo has